There's a player averaging 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists per game, and seemingly no one is talking about it.
These are numbers that 10 years ago would have put any player in consideration as one of the greatest of all time, let alone greatest for their respective season.
Yet, there's hardly any conversation about Luka being the league's most valuable player.
Just look at some of the performances he's put up this season, and you begin to realize Luka is being held to a higher standard than anyone else right now. And I think we know why.
We might be looking at the MVP award and how we value players all wrong. When Luka Doncic first entered the league in 2018, he immediately leapfrogged all the assumptions we had about his game and his potential.
By his second season, his 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists earned him first-team All-NBA and a fourth-place finish in MVP voting. He was only 21, and already the general perception was this is the future face of the NBA. An MVP or two was inevitable.
But 4 years later, despite improving his game nearly every season, his place on the MVP ladder board has been trending in the wrong direction.
Have voters gone on a Luka strike? It's almost as if the goalposts have been moved and everyone seems to be less impressed with Luka magic. There's no doubt his dominance from day one set the bar insanely high, but we have to wonder, with another season of outdoing himself, could this finally be the year Luka wins his first MVP?
If you're curious as to how this MVP race has gone so far, you probably could have guessed it from day one. It started with Jokic leading the pack, Embiid turning into prime Shaq to overtake him, and then getting hurt, which allowed the Joker to return to the top spot with, at that time, SGA in second and Giannis in third.
But the crazy part about all of this is the whole time Luka was ranked so low. But again, why? Is it because his playstyle is too polarizing to reward? After all, his game is often compared to Rockets' James Harden, and we all know how that turned out.
Or is it because of the team's record? Where exactly is the balance between individual dominance and team success when evaluating the top talents in today's NBA? Here's a number for you, 41.8. That is the combined number of average points, rebounds, and assists per game of every MVP over the last 30 years.
This season, Luka is checking in at over 53 points, rebounds, and assists, the highest combined total of any player since Kareem 50 years ago. Putting up these kind of numbers usually results in a lot of wins and an end-of-season MVP trophy to go along with it.
But here's where things get weird. Luka, for some reason, seems to be the first player to suffer from voter fatigue before winning anything.
Facts. Most of the players on the top of this list won an MVP for their efforts. Kareem missed out on the award in 1973, but he already won back-to-back MVPs the previous 2 seasons. James Harden finished second in 2019, but he won the award the previous season as well.
Raising the bar to first-team All-NBA after his sophomore season meant that exceeding expectations would become nearly impossible. It seems like every year we sit back and say, how is Luka going to top that season? Then boom, he does it again. So maybe it's simply because he's not winning enough games.
The unwritten rule around the MVP award has always been that not only you need to be great, your team needs to be great too. But that's not always the case. In fact, recently, it's hardly the case. Look at the Joker's first MVP in 2022. He did that with 48 wins and a 6th seed in the West.
Or Russ in 2017. Brody lit the league on fire, averaging a 30-point triple-double, but they finished with 47 wins and the 6th seed.
When Russ was taking over for OKC, we didn't think averaging a triple-double was possible. But let's look at Luka's stats again. He's really not that far off.
So what's the difference? How does one of these seasons earn a player his second straight MVP, while the other hardly gets a player in the conversation?
Up until Russ's 2017 season, the MVP award was almost exclusively given to the best player on the best team. If your team wasn't the 1 seed or even maybe the 2, your chances at winning MVP were almost none.
But with Russ's MVP in 2017, voters in general pretty much threw those rules right out the window. Russ was the first time since 1988 somebody on less than a playoff 2 seed won the MVP award. And since then, 4 of the last 7 MVPs were lower than a 3 seed heading into the playoffs. It's like overnight, fans of the NBA wisened up and realized winning the most games is not always what makes a player the most valuable. So why do we make exceptions for other players and not Luka?
If the Mavs went on a nice stretch, finished with the 3 seed instead of the 5, would that really help Luka's case? The Mavs could have had an easy schedule. Kyrie could have went on a tear. and Luka would still be playing at the same level he has all season. But since they're winning more games, none of which had anything to do with Luka playing better, he would miraculously have a better chance of winning MVP.
We know this is how it works, but it's still a bit odd that there's so much emphasis on some factors when considering who the most valuable player is. The reality is, the MVP award is and probably will always be narrative driven. To look at how many wins a team has as a driving force for the MVP race neglects how the team got those wins and how much their star player contributed to getting them those wins. There's a gap there that results in voters rewarding team successes over individual impact. And that's a gap that doesn't exist when actually watching guys like Luka play.
Check out any Mavs game, and it's crystal clear that team stands no chance without him on the court. We've seen offenses across the league explode the past 5 years. Scoring records are getting broken seemingly every week. But it's not just the era we're in. The talent in the league today is at an all-time high. Just look at what it takes to make an all-NBA team, earn the label of superstar, or win the league's MVP. The stakes have been raised so high that players who have one-of-one unprecedented seasons may not even be considered some of the league's best players.
A great example of this is DeMontis down in Sacramento. He's putting up 20 points a game, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. He wasn't even selected as an all-star this season.
And Sabonis isn't a bad team, good stats player. He's a legitimate star on a contending team. But because there's a guy who does all those same things and more, he ends up looking like less than. It's insane that Luka can put up these numbers and not have the MVP waiting for him at the crib.
Seriously, I mean, if Joel doesn't get hurt this season, then it might have just been a two-man race with Luka on the outside looking in.
And then there's SGA, quietly making waves with his 35-5 stat line almost every night. But to consistently put up these 30-point triple-doubles, regardless of what the defense throws at you, to lead the league in scoring and be second in assists, if it doesn't get it done, then what will?
Facts, man. Guys, drop in the comments who you think should win MVP this year. Before we get up out of here, as always, we got to give a big shout out to our people. That's EvanAlexanderGrooming.com, man.
Yeah. If you guys want to get that beard right, make sure the hairline stays intact. Check out EvanAlexanderGrooming.com and make sure you're plugging in that promo code hoop_plug_ for that smooth 20% off.
That's right. I mean, we don't want to admit that we're balding, but hey, it's happening. Get ahead of the curve. Put some flavor in your ear.
Peace.